on the greens and things. So thank you to them. It was well worth it. So that now, I've still got the floor, so I will carry on.
Go for it.
Yeah. I sent in a piece from the Harvard Business Review, and it's actually entitled "How to Disagree with Someone More Powerful Than You." And I thought, well, two things here. Isn't it something that is important to all of us at some point? Even if the person you're going to disagree with is your mum or dad, you want to disagree. It's bound to crop up at work because that's the nature of working together. You're bound to want to disagree with the boss at some point. How do you do that and kind of get away with it, or actually make a success of it? Now, and as you read this through, coming from an ex-sales and marketing background, I realised really what's happening here is they're describing effectively a sales process. So if I just say to you that what the experts say is be realistic about the risks, i.e., the risk of not speaking up could be very important as well. You may just, you're not making a mark. Decide whether to wait, pick your time to do it. Well, that's pretty good, a good point. Identify a shared goal. Have a think about what your boss really wants. And if you can find a way of him achieving that better, but through following your suggestion, that's a sales technique. Ask permission to disagree. May I disagree? No. Well, I'm going to.
That's the first one I want to come back to
Go
when
on.
you finish the list. No, keep going.
Oh, well,
No,
just
I'll
finish the
come
list
back
off.
to it,
Stay calm. Yeah, well, that's a good sales technique as well.
Absolutely.
Validate the original point after you've got permission. They're saying show empathy, which is a classic sales technique. Before you present what you want to, you should always empathise with the other person's position so they know you understand you. Don't judge things. Stay humble and acknowledge their authority. So, look, I know you're the boss and it's up to you in the end, but I just wanted to say this. Now, what do you want to disagree with?
Well, the one there's a lot of good advice there, I think, but the one where I'm challenged as to how good the advice is ask permission to disagree. It's so obsequious. It's so cruelly.
It says, according to Grenny, who's one of the experts, it's a smart way to give the powerful person psychological safety and control.
See, maybe it's just about the phraseology, it's about the choice of words, because the words that he says, you can say something like, I know we seem to be moving towards a first quarter commitment here, which is, whatever it is we're talking about. I have reason to think that won't work. I'd like to lay out my reasoning. Would that be okay? I don't know. Maybe it's because it's Harvard and it's an American way of doing things. But
I think
you find your own way of saying that.
I think this article's really badly written.
Yeah.
The essence, and I'm just disagreeing with the people who are more powerful than me. You're the radio legends.
No, he's just got access to the microphone. That's all.
Yeah, I just turned you off. No one can hear you.
Yeah, exactly. Experts say this, that. Experts say the other. I think that this is a really lame article. I think the idea behind it is absolutely fine, in that you should have some sort of strategy to be able to disagree. But I like actually what Mike said right at the end as he was introducing this. In that I know you're the boss, but actually I'm about to disagree, and these are my thoughts. And that also depends on the business environment that you're in, because some businesses, that phraseology, you're right in there and you're having a great business discussion. And another one, you get fired for that. So, it really does depend on the business environment you're in.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely with you, because what you just said was, and I'm going to tell you why, whereas what this guy in the article says is you should ask permission to tell you why. But I think that it does depend so much on the culture of the business and of the organisation. There are people for whom I have worked. Hello, David, not the David in the room.
I don't recall ever having an employment contract.
Can't imagine he's listening. It's just so not worth disagreeing with him. You just say yes, boss, and get on with it.
Oh, really?
Because it's He's not interested.
The first point about there is a risk to not speaking up. there was no risk to.
No.
It was better to not speak up.
A massive risk to speak up. There are people who still can't get employment in the IT industry.
Kate, were you ever corporately employed? I.e., you were an employee of a big corporation. I know that you work for them now, but in an independent capacity. Were you ever an employee who had to worry about speaking up to the boss?
I've had a couple of different bosses, both with very, very different approaches, and I think part of the sort of skill of dealing with people is sort of adapting in a way to how they operate. So dealing with one is probably going to be quite different with to dealing with the other one. It was kind of like chalk and cheese scenario. Yeah. But for me, I think it's really about being respectful, whatever their level, and what it's just about. If you disagree, I think it's important to sort of convey that, but in the right time, in the right place, and without being aggressive about it.
And I think that's absolutely right. But we are all of a similar business generation, and there is definitely, one of the things was this article, another article we looked at. There potentially going to be over the next few years 4 or 5 generations in one workplace, and there are some very different views and very different ways of. Voicing an opinion, and if you the generation who use social media and are very quick to criticise and assume they'll get away with things that perhaps the generation before would never have said, and you've got to be very careful now as to how you communicate. And some people can be very, very flippant and very, very disrespectful with people who would be quite taken aback and actually personally quite hurt. And so this whole communication in the workplace now is in I would say, is this a cheesy phrase, a period of flux, because there's a generation who grew up in the 60s and 70s who are finishing up in business. There are people coming in who are, in their early 20s who had very different experiences in how they communicate.
May I disagree?
You may.
Did you ask it in that way because he's more powerful than you?
I timed it.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the timing. That I thought.
But I think it's.
I thought you were actually.
I thought you were just going to come up with a joke, but you're actually going to say something. Go on.
I was going to say, listening to what you said, and I think I know what you're trying to convey, and yet I thought, in its grander sense, no matter the style, my message from this was, as you said, stop and think about it. Do it, because if you have something valuable to say, it's like you've got to say it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
You're not doing anybody a service, including the company, if you don't say it. However, treat it like a sales opportunity. And I remember, no matter what the style is today and what's acceptable and what isn't, there will be a value in saying, well, if he were a customer, how would I broach this with a customer if he wasn't my boss?
I don't know what you were disagreeing with, because I absolutely agree with you.
But I was thinking, no matter what the change in style and what's more acceptable to one generation than another, I would be surprised if there is a new generation that breaks all the rules of selling.
I think, okay, so my point wasn't about that as such. My point was that there are communication differences, and that short, sharp comment versus a well thought out, well rehearsed sales pitch, those things can actually backfire depending on who and how you're communicating.
Yeah, big time. Big time.
And that's the concern. But in the end, if you've got a good leader in a business, whoever they are, you should be able to.
I did some work once, very brief. I did some work once.
Don't be silly, Mike. Come on.
It was, crikey, I can't remember what it was as well. But it was a horrible experience. But it was for a large bank, and they asked me to go and talk to their graduates. They had a great policy of recruiting from the milk round, really bright graduates, but they survived only for their most of them, for their graduate induction, because then they had to go, having worked in all the departments, and try and get into a department permanently. And the HR director said the problem we have is they go around upsetting people for 2 years, and so nobody wants to employ them. They're bright, they really know what they're doing, but they're just so difficult to work with. They upset people. They were so inexperienced in those internal politics. So my job was to kind of educate them on internal politics, and there's more to doing it, more to a career than knowing how to do your job.
Oh, for sure.
But
yeah, absolutely.
The other challenge in that situation is you get people who are told they're great all the time. They start to believe it.
Yeah. Pass them on to David. He'll find them a job.
Yeah. Or give them a reality check.
And of course, the big issue is if you're too rude to the boss, he could call the police. Which leads me nicely.
Oh, I wonder what's happening.
See, it's awful, isn't it?
David, you're.
It's so
Well,
good
I
at it,
didn't
though.
know how I was going to get to water.